Hello everyone, Ashendor here. Today I'm going to be continuing my introduction to Duelyst by talking a little bit about the different ways you can play Duelyst, how quests work, and finally touching a little bit on the game's lore. Now, going into the play menu, you can see right off the bat that there are basically 4 different modes of play in Duelyst. Practice mode is what I showed off in my previous video, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because it's really intended either to help brand new players learn the fundamentals of the game or to help more experienced players test out new deck designs against a computer instead of a human. Beyond those 2 functions, most players probably won't spend a lot of time in this mode. Season Ladder is what I typically think of as the main way I play Duelyst. It's the game's constructed mode, in which you play against other humans on a ranked ladder using a pre-built 40-card deck, which means that you've made many or all of the card choices, you know why you included certain cards. Early on in your Duelyst career, you'll probably be wanting to use one of these starter decks, which you will start out with kind of basic access to, and as you gain experience with each faction, you unlock additional cards for it. I'm going to talk more about how unlocking cards and acquiring new cards works in a future video, but eventually you're going to want to start building your own decks to compete because that's how you'll develop really more powerful decks and be more successful in climbing the ladder. This is, as I mentioned, my favorite mode. It's the one that I think I'm probably best at. The kind of counterpart to it over here on the right is called Gauntlet. Gauntlet is Duelyst's version of a draft mode. I believe it's called Arena in Hearthstone, just draft in Magic, and other games have similar concepts. Unlike Constructed, in this mode you're not bringing in your own deck built from your own collection. Instead, you'll be purchasing a Gauntlet run either with gold or with real money, and you'll be presented with a series of choices. For each choice, you're going to be offered 3 cards, from which you will select one, and eventually, by going through each of those choices over and over, you'll eventually construct a deck of 30 cards. Once that's constructed, it plays a lot more like the Season Ladder, in that you'll be playing against other humans. Unlike the ladder, there's not kind of a formal ranking system per se. Instead, you'll be playing either until you have won 12 matches or lost 3 matches. Depending on how well you do, you'll get different rewards at the end of your run, which usually consist of gold, bonus cards, or if you get to at least 7 wins, I believe, a freebie Gauntlet run ticket, which allows you to dive right back in. There are players that really enjoy Gauntlet, and that even play it primarily. I personally don't really enjoy Gauntlet that much, largely because I'm not very good at it, but in a future video I will try to show a Gauntlet run and how it works, and hopefully illustrate exactly why it's not really my cup of tea by losing very badly over and over. The final game mode I want to talk about is Solo Challenges. These challenges consist of pre-built puzzles that are basically intended to introduce you either to important elements of positioning, different minion abilities, or some of the really weird interactions you can actually get in this game. Now, each of these puzzles, when you first complete it, gives you a small reward in gold, usually 5 or 10 pieces, and early on this is actually a pretty good way to rank up some early gold while at the same time learning a lot more about the way the game works. I'm going to go ahead and just play through the first puzzle to illustrate how these work. Now, this first puzzle, being the very first one in the set in the easy category, is not particularly challenging. By the time you reach the other end of the personal challenges, they can actually get fairly complicated. Now, in each of these puzzles, the objective is to kill your opponent in 1 turn. To do that, the board is preset with a variety of minions available. Your generals may have preset stats or abilities. For example, you can see that my general has 5 health and my opponent has 4, as opposed to the standard 25 in normal play. And then your hand is preset with a certain selection of cards. So let's take a look and see how this puzzle needs to play out. My opponent's at 4 life, which means I'm just going to need to find some way to deal 4 damage to her, but she's surrounded by a shield of minions. My minion, Dragonlark, is a 2/1 that can fly. Flying means that when it moves, it can move anywhere on the board. It's not limited to the standard 2-space movement like most units. I have a spell that will deal 2 damage to all minions and generals, my own stuff included, and I have a spell that will give one of my friendly minions plus 3 health. Now, as I said, this is the first puzzle, and so the solution is pretty straightforward. Obviously, my general can't reach theirs, so if I want to do 4 damage to the enemy, I'm going to need to hit her for 2 with this spell, and hit her for 2 with this flyer. To get my flyer in close enough to kill her, I'm going to have to clear out this wall of minions. To do that, I need to play this spell, dealing 2 damage to everything, but if I just play it right now, I'm not actually going to do it, but if I just do it right now, my minion will die as well. So first, I need to play the RN Nexus to buff it, play the spell to kill everything, and then move in for the kill. Easy peasy. Now, after you've completed this full set of initial puzzles, the fun doesn't end there. If you go into here in the quests menu, and I'm going to talk about actual quests here in a second, each day there is a daily challenge, which is another one of these one-turn kill puzzles. I've already done today's challenge earlier, but I'm going to go back in and kind of illustrate how a slightly more complicated puzzle is set up. Now, right off the bat, you can see that this is a very busy sort of board. There's a lot going on. Here's my general, kind of here in the center of this side with 10 health. Here's the enemy general over here with a wall in between us and 24 health. I've got 4 minions set up in the corners here that are active and can do something. My opponent has this sort of giant collection of walls. In Duelyst, walls are a minion type that cannot move, but if they have power, like Blazing Spines, they can attack around them. Now, for our purposes, because there is only one turn going on here, these things, for the most part, aren't going to matter a whole lot. The thing we really have to be concerned about are these gravity wells. In addition to being walls, gravity wells have an ability called Provoke. And what Provoke does is any enemy minions or generals that are adjacent to a Provoke minion cannot move or attack anything else until they've killed that Provoke creature. In the event that you're around multiple Provokes, you have your choice of which one you want to hit. So, right off the bat, we see that my minions are basically locked down by 3 walls each, and my general can't do a whole lot unless I find some way to clear my path. Let's take a look at my hand. I have Silhouette Tracer, which is a creature that, when it's played, teleports my general up to 3 spaces. That's good, because it means I'm going to be able to move from this space over to this space and hopefully close with the enemy. I have a Soul Grimoire, which is an artifact. Remember how I mentioned artifacts give your general cool abilities? In this case, my general will have Death Watch. Death Watch is an ability that triggers anytime any minion dies. And in this case, what will happen is once the artifact is equipped, my general will get +2 attack every time something kicks it. I have a Deep Fire Devourer, which is a creature where, when I play it, it kills all my friendly minions around it, and then gets +2/+2 for each one it's killed. But because this is only a one-turn game, this one will not be able to act in the same turn I play it. Finally, I have Darkfire's Sacrifice, which kills a friendly minion to make one of my other minions in my hand cost 2 less. I have 9 mana to start with. I have 11 mana worth of things to play in my hand. This spell will take 2 of that away, which means I have perfect mana. By using this mana tile, I'll also be able to play this 1 mana Bloodborne spell I have. Lilith's Bloodborne spell summons 2 of these little guys in random places around her. So, what is the shape of the puzzle today? It looks like only my general, using Silhouette Tracer, will be able to get close to the enemy. I've got an artifact to buff up her attack, so it's pretty obvious that I'm going to be the one delivering the killing blow here. And then I've got a variety of ways to either summon new minions or kill my minions to pump up my Grimoire. I also, because these guys are active, can kill some of these 1 health walls, which will also contribute to powering up the Grimoire. So, let's get started by playing my artifact. So now I can feed upon the death of lesser beings. Always a good time. I'm going to play Silhouette Tracer, which will allow me to teleport here. And this is actually an error. Now, what happens if you mess up on one of these puzzles, and in this case my error was not using my Shadow Spawn spell first off. You don't go down here, click Restart Turn, try again, and everything is reset to the way it was at the start of the puzzle. So it's actually very easy to go back and try again if you make a small misplay. I will note that once you have clicked on Restart Turn, even though it brings up a second menu, there's no way to exit out of that second menu and keep on playing. Once you've clicked this, you have to restart, so try to avoid doing that by accident. Now, first things first, Death Watch. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play my Shadow spell so that I can summon 2 of my little minions here. Awesome. Now, I'm going to play Silhouette Tracer. Now, right now, because of the positioning of this wall, my general is provoked. She would have to attack this wall before she could attack this this other general. So I'm going to use this guy to kill this thing. Rock on. That powered me up by 2. I'm going to go ahead and use these guys to kill some additional walls just to continue powering up. I'm going to play Darkfire Sacrifice to sacrifice this minion. And with that mana discount it's given me, I can now play my Deepfire Devourer here, killing all of these minions and pumping my power up through Deathwatch all the way up to 24, allowing me to kill the enemy in a single blow. Victory. So there's one of those puzzles available every day, and completing it will give you a 5 gold bonus. That 5 gold isn't really a huge boost relative to doing these other quests, but it does add up over time, and more importantly, the daily challenges are, in my opinion, very well done. They vary somewhat in difficulty, but even the easier ones are usually pretty interesting to play from, and the more difficult ones can either be outright challenging, or at least interesting in terms of the different ways things will interact in a very unexpected way. So I like to do one each day. Puzzles may not be to everybody's taste, but I would really recommend giving them a shot. I think they're kind of a nice, fairly unique thing in Duelyst beyond just a standard play. Now, the last 2 quests I have to talk about are the 2 actual quests. Each day you get 2 quests, and each day you can also replace each of those quests once. Ordinarily, these sort of gray boxes at the bottom would say replace. I have already replaced both of these quests today. Earlier on, I was initially given 2 quests for factions that I do not really play, so I replaced to get 2 factions that I do play more of, which means I'm more likely to actually complete these quests. The different quests you can have, there's a quest for each faction that simply requires you to play 4 games with that faction. You don't have to win, you just have to play 4 games. It is worth pointing out that you can't just enter a game, immediately concede, and get credit. You do actually have to play at least a little while for you to get credit towards completing the quest. But quite frankly, if you're only in it to do quests and not play, then maybe this isn't the game for you anyway, so I don't regard that as a huge limitation. The other kinds of quests you can do, there's a type that rewards you for doing a certain amount of damage within a single game, and a type that rewards you for killing a certain number of minions within a single game, which can be completed by any faction. You don't have to be playing any particular deck. By completing those quests, you get, on average, 25 gold per quest, so usually about 50 gold per day. There is also a first win of the day bonus each day. And I'm going to talk more in a future video about how gold works, how crafting works, and how you go about actually accumulating a collection. But for right now, just note that more gold equals more cards, so in general you want more gold. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about today is the Codex. This is where a lot of the game's lore is located. Duelyst has made essentially a design choice in which the game has really a considerable amount of lore available to you if you want to go looking for it. But very rarely does it actually show up in normal gameplay. It doesn't get in your face about the fact that there is a story here. The Codex contains a whole bunch of basically just written stories about mostly the history of the world that we're fighting on so far, and recently they've started to talk more about the development of the different factions and why they are the way they are, and you'll see interesting names pop up throughout here. For example, some of the generals you can choose to play as get a mention in here. Certain cards will reference figures from the lore like Rasha. So all of this is the sort of thing that I find incredibly interesting, and I've read all of these. Other players may not really care about this crap, and that's fine. If you don't click on that Codex button, you'll probably never see it. There's a world map that shows kind of the world we're playing in. Again, has nothing to do with the actual game, other than providing some context for the backgrounds we see. The only other place that lore shows up is in the collections on the cards themselves, and I'm going to try to illustrate what that looks like. Not every minion has this, but some minions do. This is not where I want to be going. And basically, what you do is when you click on a card, all the cards have this sort of expanded text section that talks about the title, the type, different things about it. Some of them have an additional lore slot here, which is basically just a written story to go along with that card. Some of these sections are written as kind of, you know, stories where you just sort of get tossed into the action or are trying to figure out what's going on. Others are more descriptive. Others sort of directly involve figures that can be found elsewhere in the lore. It kind of varies. Again, this is the sort of thing I find pretty interesting, and some of them are really quite well written. At this point, there's not really enough of it to feel like there's an overarching, cohesive story to Duelyst quite yet, in terms of why all these folks are fighting each other than for our entertainment. But I'm hoping that eventually there'll be enough to flesh it all out and really have a good sense and identity of all these different monsters and factions that you're playing. So again, if lore is your thing, like it is mine, it's there for the finding. If you're really not all that into it, you know, don't click this button. Go on with your life. You'll be fine. With all that said, I think that's all I wanted to touch on today. In a future video, I'm going to delve pretty deeply into the collection of cards and how you build decks and things like that. But for now, I think I'm going to call it a night. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.